Hello, hello. Uh, Thank you for joining another episode of What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. My guest today will be Janet Krebs. I'm really excited to see where this goes. Again, she's somebody from the greater network and peer group of Peter Sage. And so far, I've truly enjoyed the conversations I've had and just allow them to go where they go and organically follow the direction that they take. And I suspect that if you tune in, you'll be pleasantly surprised to see how this conversation takes place. All right, Janet, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited for this conversation. We're talking a little bit off air, and I can already see that this is going to be a whole lot of fun. And uh, I can already see the spiritual domain in which you're kind of taking your life, and how you are somebody who lives by your code, so to speak. And I love that you were already talking about how you were embodying some of the philosophy that we both come from, right, given to us by our mentor, Peter Sage. And I think that, maybe overcoming some adversity might be something that people could probably benefit from. And I'd love for you to just kind of say hello, say a little bit about you, and then maybe get into that story that we were about to get into about the airport.
So my name is Janet, and I am reinventing after, it's funny. And Peter actually has taught me a lot of this. There are no coincidences, as we all know. It doesn't matter who your mentor is. I have come to surrender to the fact that every single professional role that I have ever played culminates into the work that I am launching now in I call myself a parenting strategist because everybody is a flipping coach. And I really do more than coach. It's about solving some problems and strategizing with families to get the positive outcomes that they desire of their kids. But like, I was a 20-year teacher. I retired myself. I've got 2 rock star kids of my own.
Nice.
I was in HR. So like, I got the people thing down. And it's just uncanny sometimes how when we stop, be present, and listen, it all just comes to like, this is what you should be doing. This is the book that I am writing right now. So it's really a ton of fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so, what grade did you teach, or were you a professor? What was your teaching career in?
Oh, that's hilarious. A professor, Professor Krebs. That would be fantastic. No, I didn't. I've taught everything from Montessori to adults. Spent 14 years actually in a space flight simulator, which was a perfect fit for me because the curriculum kind of stayed on level playing field, but the audience was always changing. So I was a true facilitator. And that's actually where I learned a lot about what I include in my strategizing or coaching with
Mm-hmm.
my families, because I didn't have to design curriculum. I had to draw out the best in participants. So
Mm.
primarily middle schoolers, and we did some corporate work as well. So that's actually where I spent 14 of my 20 years in formal education.
Holy cow! So, take me through
Commander
that.
Krebs by day. It's hilarious.
That's
I still have the
awesome.
suit. Yeah.
Did you have like any sort of like a Star Trek emblem or anything where you'd go in and be part of Starfleet as you were Commander Krebs?
An emblem.
I no, I mean like a made up one, just like role playing. I totally would have. Like me, I would have figured out a way, even if I had a crayon color it, have some sort of emblem that's the little Star Trek, and just like there's no way I couldn't have been making like puns about Star Trek every day. Like every single day I'd be making a Star Trek pun.
Honestly, the job was really to authenticate the experience
Mhm.
for kids. So when they got into the actual simulator part of it, just to watch their reaction of like, cool, or we're walking down the labyrinth to get into the simulator, and I would be leading them and I hear them all behind me and their reactions. So imagine middle school, right? Like these are the aliens of childhood.
Hmm.
And it was engaging.
Yeah.
So I was like the magician, right? It was like I got like the feedback from parents. How do you get my kid to do that? I can't get them to do anything. And I really finely tuned how I approached kids within this experience so that it was wonderful for them. But in turn, I unlocked the magic of how to get the best out of them in an engaging situation, which translated into how to make experiences engaging so
Mhm.
you can get the best out of kids. It's stinking brilliant.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. And in fact, I've got some experience in that exact area, not as Commander Cameron, but I worked at the University of Utah in pediatric medical research. And
Right.
so I was on a very large longitudinal study where we were taking microbiome samples, nose and rectal, so we try to get a mom, a dad, and 2 kids if we could. Part of the problem here, though, is that in Utah, right, we've got a lot of
Sure.
kids per family. And if 2 kids come in and mom and dad are coming in, well, who's watching the rest of the kids? A lot of times the kids are piling into the room with me. So now here I am, a study coordinator. I have to coordinate, I have to get these samples. And there could be like 4 or 5 tertiary kids that have nothing to do with the study that I'm just there to basically entertain. And when you say engaging, I mean, really, a lot of times I'm sure you've seen adults have an ability to think that kids are almost like stupid adults, and so they talk to them almost like they're idiots rather than talking to them like a perfectly intelligent person,
Or
but just
hard
kind
of
of.
hearing, or they
Yeah.
talk to them like they're hard of hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the kids just brighten up. I'm like, here's an adult showing me attention, making me feel special. And then I'm asking them for butt samples, for nose samples. I'm getting hip and waist measurements, height and weight. We're getting like cheek spreaders to look at their teeth. And so the whole point of the study was to cross comparison a lot of endocrine disruptors as well, to see like when the baby was in mama's womb and what was her baseline level of BPA and other like phthalates in her blood, and then did
Yeah.
it like correlate to bad teeth, development in the kid. And so there's a lot of nerdy stuff going on, and like spreading. I mean, that for me, looking at a kid on a table with his cheek spread like that, it's like that's like a step away from a horror movie. And so yeah, it's pretty crazy and a lot of fun. But yeah, having that ability to engage in kids, I think, unlocked some of the best in me, to be honest.
They we can bounce off of here if we need to, but I remember my most memorable favorite experience in the simulator. I was actually in mission control. We had both a mission control and a spacecraft, and the participants switched places, so half their time was in each. And I happened to have been working in mission control, and every year we did a deaf mission. So the School for the Deaf came with signers. And so somebody was standing right next to me and would, sign to the kids so that they could have this experience. We had just installed a new sound system. And so I'm like, screw it. Like, my audience is deaf. I want to see what this thing can do. So I crank it up, everything, bass, thrown all the way. Everything is full blown. I don't know if I'm going to blow up the system or not. It's pretty new. I've got these big screens behind me. We're all doing the countdown, it's 5 for visual with the hands. Lift off, and they're watching a shuttle film. The floor obviously is, all the speakers are all over this room, and you can feel it. And this young adults, because the Deaf Institute here is multi-aged. And the kid taps the other kid and he goes, and he mouths, he goes, I heard that. I'm like bawling because I thought to myself, I helped that, like, that's the language he used. He didn't say, I felt that. He didn't say, did you feel that? He's like excited because in his world, he heard that.
Yeah.
And I walked to the back of the room after I said my spiel. And I thought to myself, if I never work another day in this simulator, I will have done my job. Like, that was the the greatest gift I had ever gotten.
That is fire. That's fantastic.
It
Oh my
was
gosh.
fire.
So I may already know the answer to this question, but I do like to ask my guests, what is spirituality to you? Like, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, that was a great question. I should let you know, by the way, because you told me what your name means. I had to look mine up too, because I was like, I don't even know what Janet means. I should know that. That's a great nerdy little trivia thing I should know. Uh, it's so different to everybody, right? And
Mm.
so that's the beautiful thing. There are no wrong or right answers. I think for me, spirituality is a knowing. For me, it's just knowing that there's something bigger than me that completely surrenders me to the abandonment of ego and anything tangible. And it's just knowing. It's just a knowing and a connection.
So when you say abandonment to like the tangible, you mean like instead of owning something, you're experiencing something, like you're going out and exploring as opposed to just like piling up materials or like
Yeah,
what?
like it doesn't matter. Like if I can truly just get into that moment and just abandon from the responsibilities of adulting, which we all have to do, then it's just that complete abandonment of that and just to get quiet and connect with the things that really matter to me. I think my problem is I could stay there all day.
Yeah.
And of course I can't. So I do work that inspires me so that my crossover, my bridge is a little bit more organically in alignment. But yeah, I think that's it for me. Just knowing that it's not about, Peter would say, the external world, and for me, that's pretty close. It's an internal space and a
Mm.
knowing.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great answer. And I usually like to ask, how you harness the power of spirituality in your life, but it seems like bringing magic to wherever you are, having that base going, like, and just following your inspiration, right? Hey, what can this sound system do? And just by you following your inspiration on, hey, let's have fun, you provided fun. You provided an enlightening experience for somebody who, one, probably didn't expect anything on that level, and then two, probably blew his mind, right? You were probably tapping into whatever energy he was feeding out, and that's probably what overwhelmed you and made you cry. And like, what an incredible experience. That said, I don't want to define it for you, but again, I suspect that I kind of have an idea of how you actually harness it in your life.
You know, First of all, it's been 10 years since I've even told that story. So thank you for making me think. I don't even know. Well, there is no coincidence, but I don't even know what made me think to share that with you. But I've never even thought about, like, I've never hit rewind to
Mhm.
go back to that experience to lace it up in a spiritual context. I go get my flask? We could be matching
Oh
flasks.
yes, yes. Then we can like, yay.
It's right in the other room. Yeah, same one.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, thank you for that. I never really thought about that because, in all fairness, like that's where my passion, that's where my mission is right now with positive outcome parenting.
Mhm.
And a lot of it did come from teaching, and that's what you're right. It was positive outcome teaching as
Yeah.
well, which is what we do every day.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That was a really cool frame. Thanks.
Hey, you know what? Well, and so here's the thing. One, I'm a giant nerd. So that right there is, I don't know if you can see, that's Play-Doh, right? That's
I
Kenny
can't
Wilber.
see it. Yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
I'm a big nerd too.
Yeah.
So
Well, and then on top of that, though, being nerdy, studying philosophy, and then coming across not just Peter Sage, but also Ed Stracher, it really helped me understand my purpose. And as I was healing myself, I also drew upon the wisdom of Jordan Peterson, which was, hey, probably the best thing you can do in your life is to create your highest ideal of goodness, and then that you can conceive of, and then make yourself worthy of it. Well, and here I am. And then Peter helped me understand I am. And then Ed helped me actually act actually like touch and become part of I am, and then create magical abilities. So as I've learned to bring myself toward goodness, well, I like to be able to bring others toward goodness. I mean, that's part of the healing process. And I love that just being a nerd and just being curious and just asking a fun question could actually bring you that pleasure. And because I took great pleasure in just hearing the story. And I bet reliving that felt pretty awesome. So you know what? You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, isn't it's all about asking the right questions. If I had a dime for every time I said that to my clients, just ask better questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ask better questions. They'll be like, "Oh, well, my kid." I was like, "Well, did you ask him?" They look at me and they look at the spouse. I was like, "No." I was like, "Why?" Why not? Maybe a better question. Like you might want to think about doing that. That's, he's 13. He's got an opinion.
That is such a fantastic point. And, like, so I've got a 10-year-old son myself, and listening to Alan Watts a lot and understanding his take on, the great Taoist principles has helped me a lot with my son. Because in the same way that, Alan Watts talks about how when people try to better their lives, there's almost like this karmic buildup that was just waiting to be released. It has no problem just kind of staying there if you don't go on the spiritual path. But once you do, it's like immediately it comes for the piper to be paid. And then often people feel like it's almost like a rail car, like a freight train, and they have to unpack each freight car from going from the back, unpack it, shunt that one in the side, then get to the next one, unpack that, shunt that one in the side. Where he talks about the simplest way and the Taoist way is to just uncouple from that first car, the engine in that first car, and that's what unloads it all. And having that approach with my son and be like, well, my son who lived a year ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, is not the same son who I'm seeing right now. And if I can take him as he is now, well, then that's also going to be able to teach him, hey, it's also possible for you to do that. And if we can do that for ourselves, and then
I
we
was
can do
just going
that
to
for
say,
others.
I
Yeah.
was just going to say, I think I don't know who it was that said it. So one of the great inspiring thought leaders, it's like, oh, Esther Perel,
Mm,
you're not even the same person like that you married. So if you're in a relationship or what, like you evolve as a different person. So why would we not think that of our kids?
right.
What we fail to do, I think, as we do, quite honestly, with adults, our partners, even sometimes our friends, is to check in to see where they are currently, having gone through some change. We don't check in. We just rest, we just become complacent.
Yeah.
So like from 10 to 13, huge, well beyond the physical. Like it's easy to see how they've changed physically,
Hmm.
but what's going on in that heart and soul?
Yeah.
That's the magic right there.
For sure. Well, and speaking of heart and soul, and maybe be able to command authority from it, you were talking offline about how you were excited to go on a vacation. It sounds like you're going to go visit, Peter Sage, maybe give him a high five, maybe give him a hug, and something happened in the airport. Can you maybe take us through that? And then what were the tools that you accessed to help you through that situation, and what kind of resulted?
So I'll preface. So this was a big deal,
Yeah.
right? This is a big deal for anybody out there who has ever, I mean, in our community, in the Sage Academy community, whatever you want to call it, EMF, we finish a program and we have our cohort, we've bonded, and now we have an opportunity for the big reunion, and it's Peter's birthday. And, I didn't even know what the hell a Tenerife was, let alone, I am not kidding. I had to look it
Yeah.
up on the map, like, what?
Yeah, I
And
didn't
then
either.
super excited. I was squirreling money away for the longest time. I had $5,000 in my nightstand, ready to just go. So it's go time. And we're like on the tail end of a pandemic. The bureaucracy with traveling across the pond. I'm here in the US. was very cumbersome and intimidating, I might add. And I'm doing all this by myself. It's like, I'm excited. I'm going to meet all these people. I'm going to meet Peter. I'm going to go to this beautiful place. And I'm packed. I'm ready to go. I see a client that morning. I'm a personal trainer as well. I come home to the message, my flight has been canceled. I call the airline. They get me on a different flight, which actually is better because I have less time in the airport.
Nice.
Which is great. Except what I didn't know was that Newark, New Jersey airport, which was my international connection, can be and is known as the shit show of the US as far as travel connections. And I'm all packed. I'm ready to go. I'm landing in Newark after the comedy of errors, Murphy of everything. And I'm sitting on the tarmac and it's clocking down. And I've done this a few times, so I know I'm like really skimming. Anyway, there's a gal that's on the plane that I need to be on. She's like, hey, where are you? And we were excited to meet each other and travel together. And within moments, it became very apparent that I was not going to make my connection. So everybody on the plane is, can you do, are you okay? And this lovely couple, they're like on their honeymoon. Well, we're going to be okay. We've got a couple of hours. Bless you, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, another line of trying to get everything taken care of. I just surrendered. It was like, I'm out of control. So all I can do is see what my options are. I'm in a strange city by myself. I have no idea what I'm doing. Another line, do you know that I was the last hotel accommodation that they gave away?
What?
I'm not kidding. I was standing in line and I get this text that says, you have a credit for, we're going to put you up in a hotel. We're going to give you money for food, blah, blah, blah. So I'm kind of standing in line thinking, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
I get up there. The gal tells me what my options are to get to Tenerife, which were not looking good because now the ROI is it's going to take me 30 hours to get there because of schedules.
Yeah.
Nobody behind me, nobody around me in line had been given those hotel accommodations. And so I was like, how did that even happen? And then they closed the line behind me because so many people had been displaced. They literally had nothing to offer them. And they were on their own. And all I had to do is go down and make it to the cab, call the hotel. It's like, I'm here. Yeah. It's 3 a.m, mind you. It's 3 a.m. So it's a little intimidating, but it was like, gosh, you got to be kidding me. Like, I've got a hotel and everything. It was nothing fancy, but I was happy to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a place to lay my head. And the funny part was the guy finally comes after like 35 minutes and he says, are you waiting? I said, I think you're waiting for me. He goes, I guess I am. Well, yeah, duh. We're the only 2 people on the platform. And he says, do you mind if I smoke this cigarette? And I looked at him and I said, I have been waiting 35 minutes for you and it is flipping 4:30 in the morning. And I think you can smoke that cigarette when we get back to the hotel. I was
nice.
Got a little snarky at that point.
Yeah. What did he say?
He I don't think he was expecting this. I'm not very tall. I'm like 5'2", like 110 pounds. But I smacked him down. I was like, yeah, no, that's a no. Anyway.
Well, most people are afraid of confrontation. So even though they'd hate it, they would just sit there and say, that's fine. And then just be smoldering. But
I was tired.
Tired. I love the authenticity. Yeah, tired or not. Like I love.
Yeah, I was just tired, and I am a former smoker, and I don't endorse smoking, and so I was kind of like, no, where the hell were you? I've been waiting for you for 35 minutes. Yeah. Anyway, long story short, like I got food, and I had accommodations. I spoke to my girlfriend the next morning. I was like, I really don't know what to do. Do I go forward? Do I go backwards? And then I realized, and here was a beautiful epiphany. I didn't need to get to Tenerife to have actualized what I had learned. It it was
Yeah.
icing, right?
Yeah.
It was icing. I really wanted to go and meet everybody,
Yeah.
but it didn't change the internal shift that I had already experienced. It was icing.
That's awesome.
And so I watched, as maybe you did as well, watched because there was lots of video and everybody
Mhm.
having a wonderful time and all over social media. And not once did I feel like, shit, that should have been me. It was just like, oh, look, there's Joyce, there's
Mhm.
Kelly, there, like these were my people. And so it was just like I just gave it up. And it was like, someday I hope to make it to Tenerife, or maybe we'll do a US
Mm.
something and we can all meet here in the US, but Tenerife looks like a lot more fun.
Yeah, it does look like a lot more fun. And
I was really proud of myself. So
well, and so to unpack that a little bit,
yeah,
Peter Sage does talk about how surrendering to the river, right? Very Taoist property, surrendering to the river of life. And if this is what's happening, that which you resist persists. And it's already going to happen. Like you already know you're not, you're either going to have this 30-hour, like you said, shit show, or worse. And new work, more like poo work, huh? Am I right?
yeah.
But so this is already going to be a catastrophe. So you can either suffer worse by thinking, why does this happen to me? And then if we ask that question, well, what happens if we get an answer to that question? Oh, here's why. Oh, here's also why. Oh, here's also why. And do we really want an answer to that question? Because I certainly don't want an answer to that question. Unless it's something amazing. Oh man, why does this always happen to me? Awesome, sweet, right? But coming from a place of lack or scarcity, when we ask those questions, we're often asking, well, we are asking a digital database that eventually is going to give us an answer. We likely don't like that answer, and we'll often even forget that we asked it. But that feeling stays because, again, that which you resist persists. So you could have been in a place where you were standing in poisonous waters, just absorbing it, or you could just step right out of it, right? The Tao talks about you give evil nothing to resist, and it'll go away on its own. Not because it's not there, but because you can step out of its way. And so you could have been starting to allowed your soul to get drained and your energy just like, oh, I'm so angry at the world. Or instead, just like, you know what, this is it. You surrendered. And then you got something nobody else got, likely because you did something nobody else did.
That will always be a mystery to me.
Yeah.
Because when you're standing at, it's like sitting on an airplane next to the person that spent twice the much for their ticket and you just don't want to say anything. I was listening to people in line as frustrated, having been canceled
Mhm.
from their flights as well, because it wasn't just ours. And they were like, well, what are we going to do? And I was just quiet. I just kept looking at my phone, like, I have a room.
Yeah.
I'm safe. I have a place to be tonight. I will be okay.
Yeah. Nice.
Unbelievable.
That's fantastic. And then is that something that you think that you would have been aware of or cognizant of, just a surrender, had you not gone through the EMF program?
Well, that would be $1 million question, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll never know, because I am a forever, I won't, well, I am forever changed. Definitely not a master. As a matter of fact, I just at the beginning of this week, working on my book, there were and Peter was on, like very vibrant this week with some programs that he had on, and I'll never pass up an opportunity just to listen, because it's always a great reminder. But I woke, like Monday, I was like, I got to go through this again. And my cohort is going through it again. And this is the week where we get to meet on Saturday morning. So it's a very Peter week. So I don't know. My world will never really be the same, but I need to go through it again. This is something that's going to need to be entrenched and constantly reminded. I'm a tortoise when it comes to learning. So not a disclaimer, but I there's a lot to learn. Like these are big, these are really big concepts. And I'm 59. So a lot of my programming is pretty, like my tracks are deep. So to
Yeah.
undo them at this in this chapter, it takes a minute to just kind of undo it. And so that's not an excuse, but it's definitely, I have to give myself grace for taking a minute to internalize all that needed to be internalized.
I think it takes everyone a while. And even though some people might be faster than others, uh, there's always levels and deeper levels and deeper dimensions that we can take it, which, a lot of philosophy around incorporating, these ideas is really a lot of what Peter talks about as well, is if you've heard it before, we'll hear it again, because that repetition is needed.
Right.
Because in the same way, so I had a revelation, thinking of, the idea that there's no such thing as coincidence, right? Us on this conversation, you having that wonderful journey 10 years ago as Commander, Krebs. And I been doing a lot of relationship building on Alignable. I don't know if you know about Alignable. It's a social media network for business to business. But I met a guy who then said, "Hey, you're interesting. I'd like to invite you to our group." I was like, "Okay, cool." And showed up because it was during the time I take my son to his gymnastics. And we have a lot of fun before, but once he's doing it, I don't really get to see him much. And so I'm just sitting there for an hour and a half, just having to figure out, what to do. So pretty boring. And so it's okay. Well, look at that. A group just manifested to entertain me. That sounds awesome. So I tune in, talking to them. Second week there, I'm hearing a guy talk about the parable of when the Pharisees approached Jesus and like, "Yo, bro, which one of these commandments is the best, dog?" And Jesus didn't, so here in Utah, people will absolutely do what those Pharisees did. And what I mean by that is they'll pull from the letter of the law, 100%. Every people like clockwork. They'll stand up to a podium during their testimonial week, which is the first Sunday of the month, and they'll say, "Brothers and sisters, I know in my heart that the Book of Mormon is the one true word of God, and that Joseph Smith is the one true prophet. And I know that as my testimony." That same another person will go up and say the exact same thing. It's like that was like cut and paste. Like, what do you mean you know that? There are like, and so I'm listening to him talk about this, and then I'm thinking of all the things that I've gone through. And I've heard this parable before plenty of times, but not since I've really been digging deep in Peter, digging deep in Alan Watts, and also Robert Scheinfeld from Busting Loose from the Money Game. And so I'm listening to this, and he's talking about how Jesus, pulled from the spirit of the law, which was, honor thy God above all others, not honor Janet's God or honor Joshua's God, honor thy God. And what Robert Scheinfeld talks about in Busting Loose from the Money Game is that anytime something shows you a limitation or a place of distress, right, discomfort, well, you lean into that and you remind yourself, oh, this isn't who I am. The eternal is I am. And so honor thy God. Oh, Jesus isn't talking about a heavenly father, some dude in the clouds. He's literally saying your soul, your God self. So now this is like opening up in my mind. And they're like, well, wait a minute. Then Robert Scheinfeld says that, well, the people who come into your life then have been given a script from your eternal. So he doesn't use the word God self, but from your eternal, right, from your true self. Well, if you've done sales training, they'll, especially modern stuff now, we will manifest the objection that's going on in our head. If we don't trust ourselves, we don't trust the process, we're unsure. Well, that's exactly what's going to come out in that prospect. And well, that sounds like a script, yeah. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So Robert Scheinfeld just broke down. I'm sure he knew this, but maybe he didn't. He just broke down that exact parable. And what I love about that even more is that, so again, here's this script that's coming to me. Well, if you love your neighbor as yourself, well, because you realize that script came to you from yourself. And so that's kind of that unity consciousness. And that's incredible. And then I take that with my love of the Tao and the Tao Te Ching. And again, give evil nothing to resist, and it goes away on its own. Peter Sage, that which persists, or that which you resist persists. So doesn't mean that evil's not there. It just means you can step out of its way. And what did he do? He just stepped out of the way by being clever and by showing a greater truth. And then I know a nerd scientist that Peter likes. Einstein used to have conversations with him. It'll come to me, but it was the opposite of a correct statement. Niels Bohr. The opposite of a correct statement is a false statement. But the opposite of a profound truth may well be another profound truth. And that happens because it goes to a different dimension and transcends.
I sure hope you've got people near you locally that you can have these conversations with, because like a lot of people would be sitting here listening to you that are not in this mindset, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just be like,
yeah.
What did he say?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So these ideas.
That's the challenge sometimes, to find
is.
a community that you can feel at home with and be this person, because this is who you are,
Yeah.
and not have to feel muted.
Yeah. Because none of these references, are relevant to anyone else, or they would just immediately turn off. Now, I have been blessed by the Highland Lake Ward, which is in Cottonwood here in Utah. And I have a friend there, Rustin Barrows, who, I started to go down the dark night of my soul. And I reached out to him because I had a vision pumped in my head of a podium and that I should be speaking behind a podium. What's interesting about that is after meeting Ed, now I'm an ordained minister. I don't have any immediate plans to utilize it, but I'm not against the idea of turning these ideas and this evolving philosophy into something of an organized-ish structure that's non-dogmatic, that just explores spirituality. But I have been able to, because the testimony meeting. So here's you get a person saying, brothers and sisters, I know in my heart that the Book of Mormon. Then you get, 2 or 3 other people basically saying the same thing. You get the random one-off person who really actually shares from their heart about how hard the struggle of life can be. And then I go up there and I just wax, philosophical. And so they've really allowed me to share ideas, which I'm very grateful for, because sharing ideas with them helped me along my healing journey, because I used to dismiss people like, oh, that's just somebody who thinks, bad thoughts or problematic thoughts. That's just the other. And then listening to Jordan Peterson, he talks about how, hey, just because somebody can't articulate their argument very well, that doesn't mean that they don't have an argument to articulate. It's like, oh, I've been an asshole this whole time. I've been an asshole this whole time. You're right.
I love him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it really helped me humanize them and see, hey, these are people with problems too. And do they think something silly to my view? Yeah. But you know what? I probably bet that whole diatribe I just went on is probably pretty silly to them. And so that's okay. It's okay for us to have silly thoughts, and it doesn't discount us. It doesn't take away from our value. And it's good to remind ourselves that, like, we're not perfect, and to actually interact with people. So I do have a little bit of a group. I haven't been going there as often, but I feel compelled to probably go there in February. I think I've got a good one brewing. So we'll see.
That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Really
what do you got going on? What's this post Peter Sage? Oh, before we get into that, what cohort were you in?
13.
13. That's right. We talked about that. So Eric Brox and Sue Brown. Eric was my community manager. That guy's awesome. And
How about you?
so I was in 17 actually. So yeah, graduated not that long ago. And I felt, when I first saw Peter, I felt like he was like, I came from the future back in time and said, hey bro, keep it up. You can be me one day. And granted, if I become Peter, who Peter is now, he's then going to be Peter then, right? So he'll be further advanced, which I'm totally okay with. But yeah, so how do you find EMF helping you in your own career, in your own life, now that you've gone through it, and especially going through it again?
Oh boy, that's really big. That's a really big question. I would say I had to really, I wanted to, like that whole goop thing, the good opinion of other people, for those that are listening that may not know what that is. I think I thought I was so evolved in that whole thing. It's like, I don't really care. I don't give a shit. But I think I probably did more than I thought I did. Again, lobbing over to being a person that, young people would look up to. And now, of course, writing this book and coaching families. I think what I'm loving most about it is, if I could answer it this way, it's one thing for me to internalize everything, goop, detaching from the outcome, asking better questions, just to name a couple of highlight kinds of things. But to help to use that with my families for their kids, that to me is one of the best ways that we can legacy the learning, because not everybody on the globe is going to go through the teachings. And so even if in one little way we can impart some of these wisdoms to impact others' lives, then that's a great gift. I would love to design an app that kids come in and listen to first, middle school especially, first thing when they come into school. And because they're plugging into something. This is just the reality of public schools these days. So wouldn't it be great to just like have them dial in to some affirming language to start their day off correctly? Whether it's, some of this stuff or, goop, or, hey, welcome to school. Happy Tuesday. Like, leave whatever drama you had at home. And now you're sitting in your classroom. You're wonderful. You're smart. You're going to ask questions. It doesn't matter that, blah, 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 fill in the blank. Like, you're here. Let's have a great day. Take off your headsets. And then everybody's starting on an even playing field. Like, this would make dramatic change in school. So that's like that would be one of my big applications, is like some of these trainings filtered into young people, because like I said, I'm 59. I went through Peter when I was probably 57-ish. 57 and a half, 58. And there was a lot of it like, gosh, how much time did I waste?
Yeah.
Like, being the star of your own movie.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great for kids to realize, with respect, obviously they're not on their own, but just giving them the empowered voice to make decisions and problem solve for themselves, which is part of my book. But it's like, why do we have to go through a turning point or a suffering or whatever brings us to the personal development realm? Why are we not teaching this earlier?
So I had two thoughts cross my mind as you were talking about that. There was a cynical side, and then there was the improv, which is yes and, hey, let's take this idea and see where it goes.
Oh, I'm learning all that right now.
Oh, are you really? Awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to, if I may, I'd like to maybe see where maybe I could poke a hole in the donut, not to be rude, but because I'm not sure. I wonder, would we create a problem? And maybe it'd be a good problem to create, but would we create a problem getting these good manifestations and these affirmations in kids, right? These empowering affirmations, to then put them in a public education system, which is all about disempowerment. It's all about raise your hand, make sure you're compliant, right? Compliance is the key, right? You do math the way that the math teacher tells you to do math, not really necessarily an objective standard. You try to lobby to your teacher a lot of times. And I wonder if there might create a problem, which again, maybe is a good problem to create, because I guess the organic structure might be that they can solve their own problems by then being able to articulate in their empowerment to their parents what's going on. And then the other thought I had was, well, there's this Class Dojo app where, let me know that that my kid got like a point for doing something good, and so I can kind of spy on them in a good way, I guess. But if there was a oath of manifestation or these affirmations, how interesting would it be to be like, hey, this is what your kid listened to. Why don't you go ahead and listen to it as well? And let's
Right.
mark off some accountability, and then you guys can share your affirmations and what they meant to you. And so,
Like,
yeah,
here's your cup of conversation over dinner, which is
yeah.
one of my things, it's like, yeah, like a shared experience, a bridge, if you will.
Well, but and a bridge that makes itself stronger the more you walk across it.
Yep. Yeah. I don't have all the answers. Like I said, it's just a
Sure.
big idea.
I love the
And I
idea.
love, and I love, I mean, I am a very coachable coach. So I'm open to any and all, again, especially when it's just in its infancy. But and
Nice. Well,
yeah, I fell
good
into
catch.
it.
Good
And
catch.
it's a practice. It's
Yeah.
definitely a practice. I would love, so your example of the kids, with the conformity, which is
Yeah.
that's the word I kept hearing, conformity.
Yeah.
There's a place for conformity because we all live in a society, and we, at some level, have to figure out how we can play the game
Hmm.
and conform at a level. But what a beautiful conversation for a child to say, I know I'm supposed to do this, but that's like, I don't get it. Like, that's just not me. And when I'm older, that's not going to be me. That's a great critical thinking moment.
I agree. And I
I
would
have
love
to
that.
play
And
the
I would
game.
celebrate that.
I
Yeah.
mean, my kids, I have very smart kids, and they would come home all the time. I was like, why do I need to do that? I was like, you don't. I'm not going to lie to you. You don't need it. However, at this moment, can we just look at it as an exercise of completion? Play the game, because there will be many of these kinds of games that you have to play in life to just play the game. And then you're going to get to an age where you get to say, I don't have to play that game anymore. But in order to get there, you kind of have to go through a couple of those turnstiles to get to the other side.
Learn the rules before you can break the rules.
That,
Because you got to
so
know what rules are in place to know what rules can be broken. Yeah.
so I would love it if a kid said that, and give them an answer other than because I said so.
That
Right.
well, and like what you just said right there, that's fantastic. And that's I don't see any objection with that. I don't see why that's not perfectly acceptable to say, well, look, there's all sorts of games in life, and this is part of, choose this as a learning opportunity to play the game, and the better you play the game, the better you'll be. And look at it as an exercise of completion. I
Yeah.
like that. Doesn't make you better, doesn't make you worse. Look at it as an exercise of completion, and that will then tell you your objective results on how good you are at playing the game.
When my son started high school, very early, like day 3, in a locker room, somebody, I don't know, headphones or something out of a locker room, they
Mm.
swiped, and he came home and he was very disappointed and kind of pissy and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, let me just tell you, high school's like a little mini city. You've got all sorts of people. The hallways represent all sorts of neighborhoods. You go to all these different places, the library, the restaurants, which is the cafeteria. You've got the gym, which is actually the gym, blah, blah, blah. And your job is to learn how to live in the city with all these different people. And unfortunately, on day 3, you just learned that some of the people in your community or your society aren't great people.
Yeah.
So welcome to the world. It's like, this is like a little mini society. And
Yeah.
like, he got it. He was like, oh, I was like, so your job is to find people that you can be, friendly with or whatever, and carve out your little community within the city. And he got it. It's
That
like,
is so empowering, like for real, to actually give somebody a basic understanding of how things work, and like, look, don't moralize it. This is just the way it is. And so figure out how to operate within it. Like, kudos to you. That's awesome.
well, thank you. It's in the book. These are all good. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not because they're in the book. It's just like, thank you. It validates that I did a couple of things really right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll be looking forward to, you said that you're still writing it. Yeah.
Yes, I am. I'm involved with two writing opportunities right now. One is a compilation book, and then this one is, I haven't even named it yet. But, and that's a real but and yet, I'm so glad. So I had a computer mishap and I lost everything on my computer, and I'm talking to you on a new laptop. It
Mhm.
sucks. Blah blah blah. Anyway, the beautiful thing about that though is, had I written the book that was being written at that point, that's not the book. I just this week realized that I needed to silo the mental versus the tactical. So mindset and method
Yeah.
are the two silos that are going to have to run and really beautifully integrate themselves within this book. Because if I don't do mindset, I'm not writing the book that I really want to write. And I think I was writing a book that people needed to read. And I just the other day said, you know what? Screw it. Without apology, I'm going to write the book that needs to be read. And it has a lot of it has to do with parental mindset.
Mhm. Well, and
So
you're interesting enough and charismatic enough to where I could see like the average parent being like, "Yo, there's something to this," right? And, especially again coming back to your Commander Krebs story, right? Well, she's obviously good with kids, right? She's got the authority, she's got the ability to speak from a place of experience, and certainly sounds like it too. I love your philosophy. I love your energy that you bring too, and
thank you.
yeah, that's awesome.
I want parents to be the teachers. I want to teach
Yeah,
them how to do it so that they can really solidify the relationship that they have with their kids.
yeah.
I'm just kind of like the Roxanne, try this, say this, try this, and then tell me how it works, kind of a thing. If they're at a loss, help them come up with the strategies that will work for them. Because it's not about me having a good relationship. It's about them solidifying the relationship that they have within their own families.
Yeah, for sure. And so the final question I like to ask people, and if you're a spiritual person, I almost always know the answer to this. And I'm pretty sure, again, I know the answer to this just talking to you. But as far as letter of the law or spirit of the law, what do you find more important?
I think, do you want to tell me more? And then I think I know the answer, but I'm just, tell me,
So
frame
let's
that a little bit for you.
sure. Even just going back to the parable that I spoke about with Jesus, right? The
Right,
Pharisees said, saying, here's the exact letter of the law,
right.
the exact letter of the law. And Jesus said, well, here's the spirit of the law. And so whether it's the law, and I get that we've got laws on the books, but the laws on the books here in America has, the country with 4% of the world's population, land of the free with 25% of the world's prisoners. So it doesn't seem like the letter of the law works very well.
Okay.
Um, and so I'm curious your ideas on spirit of the law, letter of the law, and if you have an example where letter of the law is absolutely fundamental, I'd be interested to hear it.
In the spiritual world or just in the
In
world in
general,
general?
in general.
I will answer that question with one of my favorite memories of a conversation that I have and actually am reminded of quite often from my children,
Mhm.
who insist on reminding me, Mom, you think that laws are made for everybody but you.
Mm.
And I always remind them that in my world, laws and rules are a framework to keep order. But when you are smart enough and you have enough common sense to understand when those boundaries are and need to be a little bit more flexible and malleable,
Mhm.
then I reserve the right to stay in that space, which of course sometimes gets an eye roll from my sheriff daughter, and then a high five from my son, who's just like, yes, go mom. I mean, they're 26 and 30 now, so they're adults. But my daughter's a sheriff. She was just like, she'll just roll her eyes like, Mom. I was like, sorry, that's just how I am. And so I guess I'm not a letter girl.
Yeah, I'm not either. I mean, well, and then, sheriff or not, right? There's those stories of, highway patrol, sheriff, whoever, pull somebody over. It's middle of the night. There's nobody else on the road. Person is a little bit over the legal limit, and they say, you know what, I'm not going to ruin your life. I'm going to escort you home, or whatever. And do we have the resources for every cop to do that? No. But does that mean that we should never do that? Equally, no. Like if you have the chance to give something back to somebody and scare the bejesus out of them, to where
Yeah.
they go ahead and perhaps change their behavior. And that seems like the better thing to do, because the spirit of the law will likely have us in a place where if we do learn, or if we act in a destructive manner, we'll likely be able to learn from our mistakes, in order to be productive. Right? We may not necessarily be able
Given
to
the
do it immediately.
opportunity, when given the
Yeah,
opportunity.
when given the opportunity. But if it's all the letter of the law, well, the letter of the law doesn't conform to emotions,
Yeah.
and we are emotional creatures that then use logic on the back end of making decisions to justify why our emotional reaction to a situation was fine. And so having a letter of the law to conform emotions just doesn't work well, which is again why the country with 4% of the world's population has 25% of the world's prisoners. And we're like, yes, land of the free. But I don't want to get too much into that. But I invite people to see, like, well, are we also doing a little bit too much letter of the law at public schools? Is there a way that we could invite the spirit of the law? I love the idea of the affirmations. Well, that seems pretty spiritual. Doesn't need to be woo woo. Doesn't mean that they need to define a God, right? They can define, whoever. If they want to be the God self, hey, awesome. They want to say that Joseph Smith is the one true prophet. Hey, you know what? Go for it.
How about just recognizing that they're going to show up
Yeah.
as their best selves?
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't know the story that kids come to us with. We don't know the story that our neighbors come to us with. So why not instill showing up as your best self at a young age? And then we don't have to undo all of this negative programming. There are a couple of things that we could probably teach a lot younger.
Yeah.
So that's just it's just a thought.
No, I love that. And I think that's exactly right. How do we help our kids? Right. Because at some level, right, you're 59, I'm 42. At some level, we've had our time, right? We've had our time in the sun. Yeah. Are we still going to be around for a while? Sure. Can we still impact the world? Sure. But likely the best impact is going to be able to reach a kid, right, when they're 5, when they're 6, when they're 7, when they're fundamentally developing their personality and their critical thinking skills. And then we give them an empowering psychology. So they're better than we ever could be.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean it's like we forget that they were born knowing nothing other than the need to eat and the need to poop and the need to sleep. Everything else we have to teach them. But at some point, we just kind of throw up our hands and expect it to just, I don't know, morph. Like
Yeah.
they're just expected to know these things. And if we let everybody else do the job for them, I mean, I don't love all kids. Trust me, kids they can be rotten. And
Yeah.
I love adults. And I'm a much better human now that I'm no longer in the classroom, I think.
Mhm.
But I think we can all agree that those kids are our future.
Yeah.
And we have a role in that.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I expect them to show up, I'm willing to show up and do my very best in my world, in my life, and the time that I have left to help them make their way, write themselves a beautiful story in their own lives in the world that doesn't look anything like the world I grew up in. So what are we expecting them to do? Just figure it out on their own? That's an impossible situation.
Yep.
That is a zero outcome strategy. That's no strategy at all. So
You're brilliant, Janet. I love so much of what you're saying, and I can't wait to see your book come out. Can't wait to read it. I hope if you do an audio book of it, that you do it in your own voice, right? I think that would be phenomenal. And I think that's also a great place to end the conversation. Other than if people want to be able to get a hold of you to kind of get these resources right in their own lives, what's the best way to do that?
Actually, I'm so low tech right now because I'm in creator mode. So you can find me on Facebook by my name, Janet
Okay,
Krebs. I don't hide
I'll
under
put
any.
your I'll put your Facebook profile in the details of the
And
video.
janetkrebs.com is a very elementary landing page, but it has my email and phone number. I'm very transparent. I'm here in the US. And and then I hope we get a chance to talk again. This has been a ton of fun. The fastest hour of my day. The next time I'm coming on with my hat.
Oh, do you have a hat? Oh, I'd love to
I
see it.
do have a hat.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So this is handmade. I will say this might outlive me. This
It's
is
beautiful.
oh, thank you. 100% beaver. Got a handmade here locally in West Valley, JW hats. And in fact, so I got this before I joined EMF. Nothing is a coincidence. Inside my hat says Joshua I am, because this was my exploration of clothes are things that we wear, right? The things that we wear are armor. They're a way to project who we are and also kind of give us a little bit of protection from the world. And I was always told, hey, I should be Josh. Hey, you should be Josh. Joshua's too little kiddish, right? Joshua's biblical, but Joshua's powerful.
Yeah.
So going by Joshua was a way for me to understand my identity. And as I was doing that, right, I heard of EMF in April of last year, joined, and then started it in May. But I paid for the hat in January and received it in February.
I love that.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? But
Yes.
yeah, this has been an incredible conversation. I
Ah,
would truly
pleasure's
enjoy
been
talking
mine.
to you again. Yeah,
Really, pleasure is mine. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
My pleasure, Jenna. And hey, you have a wonderful time, and may love and truth always guide your path.
Thank you. Back at you.
Aw,